Chancey.
Hello and welcome to On the Trail. I'm your host, Miles James Dean, and we are on location in Dover, Florida at Ted Chancey's Reining Horses. And with the man himself, Mr. Ted Chancey. I had the pleasure of meeting Ted at a horse reining event, and this was after several trainers and instructors whom I had previously approached inquiring about reining lessons, and having been rejected by all of them, either because they couldn't provide the horse to train on, or they didn't train beginners in the sport. However, Ted offered me both the lessons and the horse. Ted, welcome.
Thank you.
To On the Trail.
Appreciate it.
Ted, would you like to share with the audience who have no knowledge of the sport, what the sport is about and the horses that are used in the sport?
Right. Well, the horses that we primarily use are the quarter horse, the American quarter horse. That's what I train. That's what we have in the barn right here, right now. They're all American quarter horses. There are some guys that train some Arabs and half Arabians, and I think the Arabian Association has their own reining fraternity. I've never participated in that, but the horses we use are American quarter horses. That's what I haul to the show. That's what all my clients own, and that's where we go.
And what's special about the reining horse?
The reining horses typically will be the brokest and the most trained horses that we have pretty much in our divisions. Like some of the other people disciplines may disagree with that, but these horses have to do some pretty intense maneuvers and with little visible cues from the rider. They're kind of like driving a Ferrari, or a high performance vehicle. They're right there at the end of the bridle rein. The horses are soft. They're responsive. When someone watches the reining, they look at it and they say, "Well, that really looks easy. I want to try that." And it's, as you know now, it's one of the hardest things you'll ever do horseback.
As I know.
As you know. So it's the fact that these horses are just so responsive to your cues with your hands, your feet, your voice command.
And tell us about the patterns.
There's in the NRHA book. There's patterns that the maneuvers are circles in the correct lead changes to another circle, fast circles, small circles, big fast, small slow. There'll be a sliding stops, which is the crowd favorite. That's when the horse runs down in a straight line, puts his back feet in the ground, and locks his back feet down and continues running with his front end. Typically, these horses will go 25, 30 feet. They're really good ones. Some can go longer. And then the spin would be a maneuver where the horse plants his inside back foot on the ground and then rotates his front end around at a high rate of speed on pretty much a loose bridle rein or very little contact, in a real tight, small circle. But the back inside leg can only move like this far in a box. They don't typically stays right there, and then the front end moves around at a high rate of speed, legs cross over. It's a pretty maneuver. So
these horses come from a pretty high bloodline, some of them, right?
Well, that genetically and pretty much all the disciplines have come to that. Years ago, when I first started showing, we had the breed shows, the quarter horse show, the Appaloosa show, the Arab had their shows, and even before that, there was a lot of open horse shows where different breeds would compete together, and we did everything on the horses. It's become way more specialized now. It's you have the reining horses, and they'll cross over to the working cow horse sometimes, and then later on we may rope on them. But at the events we go to, that's just reining.
I grew up in the inner cities of New York and New Jersey. Concrete jungle.
Right.
And my horse was my bicycle.
Right.
And in fact, I didn't ride my first horse until I was in my 20s.
Right.
Now, I'm assuming that you weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth.
No, my dad was a farmer. He worked for a living. My mom drove a school bus for 31 years, and so it was not born with a silver spoon. We worked for a living.
And what got you involved with horses?
I don't know. They say my grandfather had a livery stable in downtown Tampa where they kept the milk wagon horses and the horses that drew the vegetable wagons and all that kind of stuff. And he boarded those horses and kept them in the livery stable. That's my dad didn't ride, my mom didn't ride. My dad liked, horses, and I just always craved them. I couldn't. If there was a horse thing going on, I was involved, tried to be involved in it. Wanted to watch people ride their horses. Even as a little kid, there was a gentleman that lived down the road from us that had a big Palomino horse. It was a parade horse, and on Sunday afternoons, after church and after lunch, we'd go out to the mailbox, and he would ride this big yellow stud horse down with all the fancy silver saddles on him. And I just can still remember what that horse looks like to this day. And the man's name was Paul Palacio was his name. I remember him well. And I was a small kid, and I couldn't get enough of that horse.
How old were you?
I couldn't have been more than 5 or 6.
5 or 6.
Yeah. I got my first pony, I think, when I was 7 or 8. And he was a little Shetland criminal called Trouble. He'd run you under the trees and under the fence line or the clothesline, all that kind of good stuff. Run through the pea patch. Dad always had a vegetable garden between our house and my grandmother's house, and the pony would, we would race him up and down the dirt road going to the house, and they would jump the ditch, run through the pea patch, and we'd get in all kind of trouble, and then run you under the clothes. Just a criminal pony. And I can remember as a little kid, because back then the old cheap bridles you'd buy at the feed stores would just be a little old curb bit with a leather chin strap. And I can remember taking me a piece of smooth wire and running it through a piece of small garden hose and attaching it to that bit to make a little more bite to that chin strap, that bridle, where I could stop that pony because he just run away with me. And I remember doing that as a young kid.
And this is what you were doing?
I was doing it, and nobody told me that. In my head, I thought, well, I got to get more brakes somehow. And and I guess that's, that trainer mentality was even there as a young kid. I didn't know what it was, but it was always thinking about what to do with the pony. And then I just started, riding horses. My mom and dad bought me a little quarter horse stud horse, a yearling, when I was probably 12, maybe 13, and I broke and trained him and did some stuff with him. And then I started riding horses for different people around the area, and just had some aptitude to do that. Didn't know what I was doing, had no idea what I was doing.
How old were you then?
14, 15. I got paid to ride my first horse. I vividly remember I was 15 years old, and they paid me $225 to ride this horse for a month, and I thought I was rich. Feed back then was $4 for a 100-pound sack of sweet feed, and hay was $1.50 a bale. So you thought you were really getting rich, and that's how I started, and met some people, went to some quarter horse shows. When I was still in high school, I went to work on the weekends at any weekend horse show I could get to. There was a trainer in Ocala named Tommy Faircloth who was pretty famous back then in the quarter horse industry, and I would help him on the weekends at the horse shows, and invariably I went to work for him after I got out of high school for a year or so, about a year and a half. And at the time, I didn't know Tommy was pretty sick, and I ended up doing a lot of the stuff that you would do to run your own barn. I would feed, I would clean the stalls, I would ride, and he would come out and tell me what I was doing. Try this, try that, and pretty much just ran. He had like a 12-stall barn in Ocala, and we kept them full, and we'd go to the horse shows, and I would drive the truck, and because he ended up having a brain tumor is what killed him eventually, but he was pretty sick at that time. But he was the first guy that I really was around that with the horse show stuff that taught me how to prepare horses to go to the horse show and those kind of things. And I was 16, 17 at that time. And then once I got out of high school, I went there for a year or so, and then I came back home, went to school for a little bit, and then after that I just went on my own and worked for the Carlton family down in Wimauma, Florida in my early 20s for 5 or 6 years for Dr. Leffie Carlton and Dennis Carlton. And Dennis Carlton is still a longtime friend and a customer that from back in those days.
What were you doing with them?
I ran their farm. They had show horses. Dr. Carlton was big into the Appaloosa racing out in Oklahoma, and he had one of the leading Appaloosa racehorses. He was about a half a thoroughbred or 7/8 thoroughbred, but he had color, and then Dennis showed the reiners and some of that kind of stuff. So I worked for them for 5 or 6 years, I think now, if I remember correctly, and I showed a lot of horses. Met Jack Henning through them, who was a big influence in my life. He taught me to rope at a later age than I would like to have started a lot earlier, but I was probably in my early 20s when I learned to rope and got really hooked on that, and ended up being pretty successful in the roping and showing rope horses and those kind of things, and always still had the reiners going on, and I've shown everything. I've showed the Western Pleasure horses, the halter horses, the calf roping horses, the team roping horses, done all that stuff.
So, when did you get locked into reining? Obviously,
in the last since I moved, I've been back. This is a house, piece of property that I grew up in as a kid. This is the old home place. My first farm that I built was right around the corner, about a mile around the corner, and I was there for almost 30 years, and I did a little bit of everything there, but did a lot of rope horse stuff there. But I always had my reiner, going. But when I came back here, really got involved heavily back into the reining in a big way, and end up just that's all. Now that's in the for the last 18, 19 years now. That's all I've done. I don't rope. I don't rope anymore. I don't. Everything's just straight reiners, and pretty much of it is turned into coaching and teaching. I don't show myself anymore. I found that I can't do that. I can't get my horses ready and the non-pro horses ready and do either of them full justice. My mind, I had to pick one or the other. And
either coaching or participating
or yourself. It's hard to me. It's hard to do both, because if you're going to do it, you got to do it all. You got to really just be okay. That's what we're going to do. And it's hard to do that and try to show yourself and try to get 6 or 7 non-pro people ready to show at a big horse show that we go to. We go to about 12 big shows a year across the country. We only show usually once in Florida, in Jacksonville in February, and then everything else is in Oklahoma, North Carolina, Tennessee, those places.
So you have a client base that
Yep.
that you work with.
Yep, I do.
And they're from around the country, huh?
Yep, I have a client in Michigan that keeps several horses with me. She's been with me for quite a number of years now. I have a husband and wife that show together. They're in Virginia. They're pretty new to the sport, but they've been with me. I think she's been riding now maybe 5 or 6 years, 7 years, and her husband, Mr. Chris, he's been in it now 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years. Time kind of escapes me when you're asking me how many years it's been. And those are 2 of the longer ones. And then Alicia Rapp, who's a non-pro. She's a level 4 rider, which is the highest level you can be. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and she's a level 4 rider.
The highest level you can be as a pro
or non-pro.
As a non-pro.
Well, the open riders are the same way. It's level 1, 2, 3, 4. Also in the open division or the pro division. She's a non-pro in the level 4. She was able to show in the level 2 this year just because she didn't show much last year in that level, but she's probably going to be out of it. She had a pretty successful futurity this year, and that's probably going to, because it's all on money won.
So you had to make a pretty good name for yourself in order for clients to be coming to you from around the country.
Yes, sir. I mean, you have to have some success to get them to come talk to you, and then, you come to the program and they either like your program, they don't like your program, and I don't deviate much. This is what we do, things a certain way, and I don't get away from it. I'm not very flexible that way.
I want to ask you something. You knew that I was 75 years old.
Correct.
And you knew that I hadn't ridden in 13 years.
Correct.
What made you take me on?
Challenge, man. The challenge. I mean, you were very interested. You asked the right questions. You were in incredible shape to be your age. You're in better shape than people probably half your age. So the age thing didn't bother me. The fact, and also that you had rode a horse from New York to Los Angeles intrigued me. So I wanted to know more, learn more about you. I'm kind of not one to step away from a challenge. I mean, and you had a lot of natural aptitude. The first time I saw you ride, you can tell a lot by somebody when you first see them on a horse and the way they pick up a bridle rein, you can tell a lot by somebody, or I can tell if they have feel or no feel. It's just the way they pick their hands up and the way they hold the bridle rein, you know.
Well, I appreciate you for that.
You're welcome. It was fun. We had a good time, and I do want to thank Mickey Evans and Chris Evans from Iron Gate Equine for allowing us to use Old Dirty, you know, for your lessons. So that was, I got, because I don't have a lesson program, as you know, lesson horses. So I got permission from them. They said it was surely okay to use him, and we want to surely give them a big thanks for that. So,
and I thank them as well.
And he's now retired in Virginia.
Speaking about Dirty.
Yeah. Speak about Dirty.
There was, I came to you for several lessons.
Correct.
And during one of those lessons, you had to disappear for a few minutes. And I took it upon myself to go out there and to run that horse and bring that horse to a sliding stop. And there was someone else out there with me. But I did it a couple of times, 2 times actually. And my second time, I fell off of Dirty.
Yeah.
I hit that ground.
Hurts, don't it?
It's smarted. It's smarted.
That's what happens when you do things when I'm not around.
Yeah, right.
So I tell my daughter that too.
Right. I understand.
Yeah.
But I got back up.
Right.
And got back on it.
Correct.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
So then when you came, obviously you had not seen it. And I was quite honest with you. I said, you know, I fell off this horse.
Yeah.
And you said to me, okay, well, let me see. Take him, run him again. And I did. And then you said to me, you fell off on the left side, didn't you? I said, yeah, but how did you know that? Tell me how you knew that. How did you know that I fell off on the left side instead of falling off on the right side? Do you remember?
I remember. I don't remember what I told you, but I remember. I mean, I know how I know, but I don't remember what I told you. You tell me what I said.
Well,
do you remember?
Yeah, you said to me that I was doing something with my left hand when I was bringing to a stop. I may have been jerking with my left hand.
Yeah, pulling
or
on
something
you a
like
little
that.
too much. Yeah.
Right.
Pulling on it.
But I was very impressed with that.
Yeah.
You know, I said, how does this man know on what side of the horse I fell on? So.
Well, I mean, most of the times, usually people they won't sit in the middle of the horse for one thing. They're always wanting to be canting on one side or the other. You know, these reiners, especially when they're running to stop, you want that horse running in a straight line. So you want his shoulders to be square. You don't want him drifting one way or drifting the other way. It's like a car. If you've got 4 doors on a car and all the power's in the back, if you open the right front door, you don't want all that power escaping out the right front door, because if you do, you're going to veer off to the right. You know, horses are the same way. If you let them drop that shoulder on the right side, they'll just veer off to the right. So if you're leaning one way or the other, a lot of times if you lean a horse to the left side, he'll drift to the right just to compensate. You know, if you're leaning out here, he has to move over here, try to stay straight, stay balanced. You know, people think, oh, if I lean over here, he'll go that way. Well, that's hard to do when you're running 20 miles an hour. Usually, if you get hanging way off one side, that horse has to kind of step over the other way just to kind of keep things straight up. So you can usually tell if somebody the way they're sitting on a horse. And some people are bad about they'll ride one stirrup longer than the other, or ride. What I see, a common thing I see is people want to ride a longer stirrup than they're capable of riding, trying to run stop. So they're thinking they have to sit in that saddle and that seat so much, but you still have to put pressure in those stirrups to get this done. When you're stopping these kind of horses and running that fast and saying whoa, and that horse is committing to the ground, and if you're reaching for your stirrups, sometimes you'll get out of balance and you'll fall off one side or the other. And just if your left stirrup's longer, you'll fall off that side, vice versa.
Now, I think that correct me if I'm wrong, but you have a student that trains with you now who has won some pretty impressive events.
Alicia Rapp. Alicia's been with me for about 18 years. When she got married, her and her husband live in Davis Island in Tampa, and she came to me from a horse show background, kind of an all-around deal, the jumpers and the equitation and all that kind of stuff. But she'd never rode a reiner or a rope horse, but she came here to learn how to rope. That was her. She'd kind of gotten tired of the horse show thing. She just wanted to come and learn how to rope. So she called, and I said, sure, I'll teach you how to rope. And I think that at that time she was 26 or 27, and she would come and rope. She worked at that time. She worked for a doctor in Clearwater, and she would come across the bridge every afternoon, and she'd tell me, I'm stuck on the bridge. I'll be there as soon as I can. And a lot of times she would, I think back then she drove a little white BMW, if I remember correctly, and she'd come wheeling there in her duds from work, her dress and all decked out in the nines, and she'd change clothes, and we'd go out, and I'd have the rope horse saddled. And if later on, as she got where she could rope live cattle, at first we start on a dummy. We're pulling a dummy with a 4-wheeler or another horse. It's a kind of a mechanical device that allows you to control the situation, the speed. And I had a rule that you had to rope that thing correctly for 50 times in a row before you were allowed to rope a cow. And she hung in there. I mean, I tried to make her quit, and it was hard on her, and she was here, and she's a barn rat. That's what she is. If she could convince her husband to live in a barn, they'd be living in a barn, but he won't. So, but Alicia's she stepped over to she had some success in the ropings. We took her some roping. She was, I think, reserve champion at the novice world for the AQHA in the heading on a horse. And then I had an older Reiner here. It was retired, but he was still a pretty nice horse, and he belonged to a client of mine, and I stuck her on him one day, and I let her go stop him, and he was a freak to stop. I mean, he would go 30 feet still. And she said, I want one of these. And so I said, okay. So we found a little horse called Merle for her in Ocala, and we bought Merle, and he was fairly green, but he was a 4-year-old at the time. I bought him from Steve and Jane Mabe in Ocala, and I bought him, and she won a lot of stuff on that horse. These two saddles that are here in the office were won by him, actually. For her, the first few years she was showing. First time I took her to the Quarter Horse Congress, which is the largest Western quarter horse breed show that there is. I mean, it lasts for a month. The first time I took her there, she won the Reining, which is unheard of. It's just nothing bothers her. She's sure enough a showman. She's very confident, and she's been very successful. She's closing in on a $200,000 in earnings now. Is where her lifetime earnings are getting.
And she's been in for how many years?
She's only been showing competitively since about 2016, I think.
And she's already over 200,000.
Mm-hmm. And those first few years, those lower classes don't pay a lot of money. The rookie and those kind of things don't pay a lot. She's in the levels now. She's can win some big checks now. So my goal is before I die or retire, I want to get her to $1 million. That's my goal. I want to see if I can make her $1 million rider. That's where I'm at. So I don't know if we'll make it there or not, because I'm pushing 70, and I don't know how many more years I'm going to be doing this. But I want to get her as close to that as I possibly can. But she always has 2 or 3 really nice horses, in the barn, and she's here most of the time. She's here 5-6 days a week. She has a young daughter that's 5, Loretta Jo. She's a little tornado that kind of where she rides, and she plays tennis, and she plays t-ball, and she does all kind of things. But Alicia is here a lot. I mean, a lot of times she'll be here, drop her off at school, drop her kid off at school, then she'll be out here, and then she'll stay till lunchtime. Usually, a lot of times 5 or 6 days a week.
Final question.
Yep.
If I were able to find the money to continue taking riding lessons, would you continue offering?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Why wouldn't I? You're a good student. You have a passion for this. You take instruction well. You've always been coached before in something, and you can usually tell people that have been coached because they can take instruction. And I don't care what it is. It can be piano lessons, but you know how to take instruction without getting your feelings hurt. And I know sometimes I'm not the most soft guy to take, with my With my
No, you're not.
no, I know I'm not, and I don't.
But I take
and that's
good
okay.
instruction.
Yeah.
I want to learn, so I take good instruction. But you always have a way of softening it up in the end by saying, "Slow your brain down, big guy."
Slow your brain down, and that's a favorite we have. Slow. Don't get ahead of yourself.
Yeah.
Let the horses do their job. Don't stay out of their way. They know what they're doing. Every horse I have in the barn knows they're all bought for non-pro people at different levels. I don't buy problem horses. For years I had a reputation of fixing problem horses, and I don't do that. I don't buy, and that's because I had an ego that I can do this. Everybody else says this can't be done. I'll fix this horse. And sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So I don't do that. When we buy a horse for a client, we make sure that horse fits that client. If I've got somebody that's kind of nervous and always kind of busy minded, I don't buy that busy minded horse for them. We buy that horse that's a little more down, a little more, maybe you got to kick him in the belly a little bit more to keep him going. The horse, those people that are kind of laid back, low blood pressure, they don't really, they can handle that horse with a little more fire in his belly maybe, if they ride good enough. But you always try to fit these horses to the people, and you don't buy problems for these non-pro people. You buy horses that are nice.
I think the last horse that I rode here was a $100,000 horse, wasn't it?
Yeah. There's several of those in the barn that cost that.
Several of them in the barn.
And that's getting to be anymore when you want a high-level horse. That's not. There's a lot of those. That's kind of what the. It's hard to it's hard to find those horses anymore for, 25, 30,000. That can go get the job done. So, and it's a good thing. I mean, it takes a long time to make these horses, so it's good that these people that have them are getting paid for them, and because they take a long time to make a nice horse. There's a lot goes into it. There's a lot of expense goes into it. So, I'm kind of glad to see, the hunters and jumpers, the dressage horses of the world. They've been bringing that kind of money for years, and we've been kind of behind the eight ball. But people are now figuring out these reiners. You can, number one, like the horse that won the 3-year-old futurity this year, they won about $430,000 on that horse for 1 week's work at Oklahoma City. There was between the non-pro futurity and the open futurity for 3-year-olds in Oklahoma City this year in December, or end of November and December, we were there. There was 613 horses on the dirt that showed, just 3-year-olds. There was 208, 210 non-pro 3-year-olds, which Miss Alicia showed in, and then there was 400 and some odd open 3-year-old riders, open guys and girls. Actually, a woman won the event this year, first time ever happened. A young lady won it, and was supposed to win it.
I have a personal goal. As you said, you don't know how many more years that you're going to be in it, but I think I've got you by about 5 years, so I sure don't know how much life I've got in me. But I want to try this year at age 75 to compete at a high level. I want to try that. I want to try to get to that level. So if I could find a way to continue taking lessons with you, what else do I need to be able to go into a high level show to compete?
You gotta ride, man. You gotta have saddle time.
I've got to have saddle time.
There's no, you can't not do it. That's the only way to ride it that highly. And anymore, it's not even the high. It's even the rookie class in the Green Reiner. The Green Reiner is our entry level class at the NRHA. Even that's pretty salty anymore. There's people in there that are spending a lot of money on those Green Reiners that are spending a lot of time with somebody like myself, learning how to do this, and they'll come in there and they're not just bopping around just to be bopping around. They're coming and running and stopping and getting out of the green, going to the rookie, and here we go.
Right.
So it's the high level thing anymore. I mean, even the Green Reiner is pretty high level at the big shows.
And I'm going to have to find a horse that someone is going to allow me to use.
Let's say that's a hard thing.
That's going to be the hard one, isn't it?
Yeah. That's if you. Sometimes you can find those horses that people want to lease, but usually there's there are issues with them, maintenance wise or whatever. They're pretty much done with their career, and maybe the people don't want to take care of them anymore, but they want them to have a good home. They don't want to stay at home. They want, so those are hard to find that they're still good enough to go compete at that level. That's a tough deal.
So then
that's a tough deal.
So then I've got to take these lessons, continue taking these lessons, and pray that I can find a tough deal.
Yeah.
Ted,
Thank
always
you.
a pleasure, brother. Always
bet.
a pleasure
Same
talking
here.
with you.
Same here.